If you're in the United States, good morning. If you're in Asia, good evening. If you're in Europe, good afternoon. And I just want to say that, I hope everyone is well. I know that this has been a little bit of a topsy-turvy year for everyone, but I think one of the things that has uplifted us all is the wonderful creativity that we've seen from our favorite watch brands. And I have to say that when the Alpine Eagle XL Chronograph was launched by Chopard a few days ago, it was a tremendously uplifting watch for me. And so today I have the great pleasure of having the two people behind this watch to join me. Without further ado, I'd just like to say a hello and a welcome to my dear friends, Karl-Friedrich Scheufele and his son, Karl-Fritz Scheufele. How are you, gentlemen?
Thank you. We are very well. Thank you for the introduction. And it's great to be with everyone. And again, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to the watch aficionados who are listening to us. And it's great to be with you.
Thank you very much.
That's a really cool thing with these live webinars, as you can stream to so many places around the world at the same time. And we've done a few now with my father, as you've seen the launch of the Chrono. So we've gotten used to speaking to cameras, but it's always nice to have you on the screen, especially when you're wearing such a cool shirt, Wei. Very, very nice shirt.
And you're enjoying what I think is a great cigar.
I'm having a Quai d'Orsay, which I think is a nice cigar to accompany a broadcast that I've been looking so much forward to. So gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I have to say, when I saw this watch that you guys created last year, the Alpine Eagle, I was in awe. And I was in awe because it is one of my favorite categories is sports chic watches with integrated bracelets. But you both brought a completely new and original vision to this watch that at the same time was supported by wonderful ethics from a family that really cares about ecological consciousness, about sustainability, and about all those things that are dearest to our hearts, especially at a time like this. But if you don't mind, let me take us on a little bit of a walk through memory lane, not to last year when the watch was launched in 2019, but 40 years ago to, let's say 1980, but let's even say a year and a half before that, let's say 1978. And at this point, Karl-Friedrich, you are a dashing young man in Geneva. You're a man who loves style and who loves sports, and you're looking for a watch that can express both of these passions for you. Am I correct?
You're perfectly correct, and I was a bit like Karl-Fritz is probably now. And I had this, this idea, a fixed idea, I would say, of creating a watch made of stainless steel and a watch that I could wear for doing sports, but also for going to the office, which I started to do. And so a versatile, elegant, chic watch. And basically, with this idea, I showed up my father's desk and was not exactly well received immediately, because he said, well, look, we've never done a steel watch before, and truly, I think this is maybe not what we need, and so on. And I was very much insistent, and the St. Moritz watch was actually created and saw the light of day, and St. Moritz was also a place I really liked a lot, I cherished a lot. It's where I went to spend my winter vacation, and so it was kind of a natural idea to call this watch St. Moritz, which at the time was probably one of the most interesting spots to be seen at in wintertime. There you go. That's the initial St. Moritz. We have the real thing here. Maybe Karl-Fritz wants to show it now. And this was the advertising campaign at the time. And basically, if you see the watch today, it's rather small. Today, it would be considered as a small size. But obviously, times have changed. And but it's still a very contemporary looking watch 40 years later, which is important.
You know, it's funny because I'm pulling out the Moritz now, and I still want this piece. I mean, even now that the Alpine Eagle is out, it would still be a nice switch up to wear sometimes. And this is actually the exact watch that I saw, you know, when I came in, when I was around like 16, 15 years old. And this is the watch that kind of sparked the dream of the Alpine Eagle.
Amazing.
It's always cool to see it again like this.
Fantastic. You know, Karl-Friedrich, I remember this wonderful story you told me about when you first presented the watch to the dealer network in Hong Kong. And I remember them asking you if the watch was truly water resistant, and you had a very unique way of demonstrating this. Could you tell us about that?
Well, I thought this was probably the best way to demonstrate was to drop it in an ice bucket, which was right there handy, and to prove that it was actually water resistant right there and then. And everyone was very impressed.
And tell us about the 1980 Basel Fair when the watch was launched. How many units did you sell, if you don't mind sharing us with that?
Well, by the end of the Basel Fair, which lasted a bit longer than the last ones that we saw, it lasted about 8 days. We sold 1,000 units, which is something that nobody had expected when we first presented it there. So it was a great success.
Amazing. You know, I remember this watch being basically one of the kind of coolest integrated bracelet sport chic watches of the 80s and even the 90s. And then I know in the 90s, you kind of started to, well, you were a pioneer really in focusing on in-house movement making and became really involved in this. And at some point, the St. Moritz was discontinued. So now perhaps we can jump forwards in time to, I'm thinking around 2016. And Karl-Fritz, tell us a little bit about this, but why were you interested to revive the St. Moritz or create another watch that had the same kind of quality of being sport chic?
Yeah, well, I think I have to start. That's also the time where I kind of got interested in watches, because before that, watches were really not that much of an interest to me, which was scary for my dad and my grandfather, because they were like, that might be complicated to get him to join the company if he doesn't like watches. But that's at that time that I got my first Mille watch, and that I wore every single day. This watch is now in an interesting state because I wore it so much. And it's at that time that I started spending a bit more time at the office here in Geneva. And I guess too bad for my dad, he left this watch somewhere on his office, or I found it somewhere and I couldn't take my eyes off it. So I put it in a corner in his office, kind of hidden away, so he wouldn't like put it away or something. And when I came back, every single time I would take it again and like look at it. And now I actually asked him, I thought it was a piece we were still busy selling and that we were doing. And so I kind of tried to get a hand of it, and I was like, oh, maybe I can buy one. And then I found the Mark II, the old chrono we had. And then I was like, oh, and there's another version, and I saw the different dials. And then I kind of went up to him and I was like, it's a really nice piece. We should really release it again. Even just like that, it's perfect. It fits in with the trend that's going on. And at the time, it already had started the huge trend around the integrated steel sports watches. And at first he was like, he was busy with LUC, a lot of Mille project, and there was classic racing as well, and events and this and that. And so he was kind of like, maybe now it's not the right time. And me, of course, being the annoying young teenager that I was, with zero patience, I decided to go to my grandfather and I'd asked him like, look, your son really doesn't want to understand, but you're my grandfather, so maybe you'll get it. I think we really should do this piece again. And then he let me in on the secret that they were actually already kind of working on the piece a few years back with my aunt, who also thought it was a great watch. So we kind of made a little team, a secret project team, and we would work on designs and whatnot. And when we showed the new designs to my father, he couldn't really say no. it had gone too far already for him to say, we're not going to do this watch. So I'm pretty happy I convinced him, though.
But if I'm not mistaken, I think you guys made a bargain amongst each other, which was, I think, Karl-Friedrich, you said that you saw something there, it spoke to you, but between you and Karl-Fritz, you decided that you would only release a watch when you felt that you had perfected it. Am I correct?
Yeah, but that's a bit my second nature. I'm a perfectionist, you see. So I saw that there was something interesting, but I also saw a lot of angles to it, which I wanted to improve, and some details I wanted to refine, and most of all, at the stage we were, the dial, which today is one of the most important features, was not yet ready, was not yet even thought of. We only knew that we wanted to kind of keep a reminder of the initial dial using the Roman numerals, for example. But I said we need a dial that really strikes you and that really catches your eye. And basically, yeah, there were a lot of features that we studied in detail. And finally, I think about 2 years later, we were ready.
That's what I liked about the watch the first time I saw it last year, and maybe we can just pull up the picture of the watch onto the screen, but it was perfectly resolved in every dimension. So we had a conversation before that there are certain dials that are iconic, and then when you see them from across the room, even if I was to see 1 square millimeter of them, I would know exactly what they are. And that's what I liked about the Alpine Eagle initially, was the dial was completely unique. Mm-hmm. It had its pattern that was completely something that I associate purely with Chopard. It evokes actually the iris of an Alpine Eagle, but it's this beautiful gradation of a swirling pattern that plays with the light in the perfect way and brings this wonderful sense of elegance and uniqueness to it. Then on top of that, you've got this extraordinary sort of tripartite construction of the case with these functional screws through the bezel, but possibly the best integration of any bracelet I've seen in an integrated bracelet watch, because even at 41 mm, which is the large size watch, it fits perfectly on the wrist of even a smaller person, such as your aunt, Karl-Fritz, Caroline, what you used to say, Mr. Scheufele. Yeah. I saw her wearing the 41 mm version and it fit her perfectly. So I know you were telling me that this was one of the greatest challenges and took one of the largest amounts of times in terms of perfecting the watch. Can you tell us a bit about this, Karl-Friedrich?
Well, I think we made about 5 different prototypes, different ways of attaching this bracelet, different angles, different approaches, and you know, until we got it right. And for me, this was an essential part of the design of this watch. Is that it has to fit on many different wrists. If you have a large wrist or a smaller wrist, you have to be able to wear the 41 millimeter. And it worked out, but it didn't work out the same at the first try.
Amazing. And what I liked about this watch also was the underlying authenticity and commitment to value and to ethics behind the watch. And one of the strongest points for me was the first use of Lucent Steel in a watch, which is a steel that uses recycled material, is twice forged, creating an even higher Vickers hardness. But maybe Karl-Fritz, tell me a bit about why you feel that doing something that is conscious, ethical is important even when creating a luxury watch such as this.
Yeah, I mean, me being part of this generation, I think it's a central part, and we hear it every single day. And from a young age, my parents have always kind of implemented this idea into my sisters and me that, I mean, even when we were really small kids, guys, listen, we only have this planet. I don't think we're gonna go on another one. So please, we have to really start taking care of the way we do business, but also the way we live. And when we started creating the watch, this wasn't even really a question we asked ourselves. We had to find a way to work with ethical and sustainable materials, because that's also what we started doing with the ethical gold and as well diamonds we used. So we had to really, on the one side, bring this sustainability factor in, thus the fact that we're also partnering with Eagle Wings Foundation. That's also a sign of a strong commitment we took. But again, we had to have this ethical side, and then the technical side, as you said, with the Lucent Steel A223, which also took some time because we really had to kind of scratch our heads and decide how can we bring really interesting technical innovation into a piece that on the first look looks pretty simple and looks really sleek. But then when you know more about the piece, you learn that there's this special steel, the Lucent Steel. And I'm really happy that we found this innovation. The Lucent Steel, I'd say my daily watch. I wear my XP a lot, the LUC as well, when I'm a bit more formally dressed up, we'll say. But otherwise, I wear my Alpine Eagle every single day. And the Lucent Steel really does make a difference when you wear the piece in the sunlight or in artificial light like here. It's great. So it's not only a technical innovation, but in terms of design, it's also something that adds a lot of value to the piece.
Yes, from what I understand,
and it's more resistant.
And it's more resistant, which
and it's more resistant to scratches. And it was a good coincidence because we had this project going on to replace our current steel by a more innovative and sustainable steel, and the timing was perfect to start using it for the Alpine Eagle. Although even in production it was not an easy thing to do. We had to gear up to using it. And looking back, I think it was the greatest decision we took to use this material for this collection.
You know, amazing. And I think for the watch geeks out there, I think it's important for them to understand there's only 3 types of steel, stainless steel, that are being used for luxury sports watches today. 316, which is pretty ubiquitous. Pretty much almost everyone uses it. Rolex uses something called oyster steel, which is 904 steel, which is a little bit, you know, harder and polishes a little bit better. But Chopard is the only company that's using Lucent steel, which I can also only imagine, I know you haven't spoken about this, is probably a much more expensive, not only from a base material perspective, but even from a tooling perspective as well. Because if the Vickers hardness of the steel is 225 Vickers as opposed to 150 Vickers, which is 316, that means that you're going to get a lot more wear on your machines or even have to retool them completely just to make this watch, correct?
You're correct. And that's precisely one of the challenges we had to face. And but we managed. I think it's always about, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. And it opens us new perspectives also for the rest of the Chopard collection later on. So yes, Alpine Eagle has been in the forefront also in terms of material.
And I guess we can say that this is a good example of perfect family company way of working, where the product is really at the center. And if you really want to have this material on the product, you go for it. Even if the numbers don't play out, you just do the watch and then we'll see. And I think this the family spirit and family authenticity really plays out in this watch, and that also is kind of an interesting feature.
That's a great statement. You know, I think today when someone purchases a luxury object, they're also making a declaration of the world they like to live in, and they want to support companies that also are caring about this and are making a statement of this. And you as a family certainly have done that, and probably as a family-owned company are probably one of the few companies that could take a decision to make something that was more expensive to manufacture, but for the long term was better for the planet. So bravo, guys.
Well, the Alpine Eagle is, you could say, a project about passion and family, and not a marketing-driven product that we are presenting, you know, and this is so much different, and it's so much more in a way.
And it's actually really, really funny if we would take a picture at the dinner table, for example, especially the few months after the launch of the Alpine Eagle, I mean, every single member of the family was wearing an Alpine Eagle. So we would show up to a restaurant or somewhere and everyone at the table was wearing the exact same watch because we were all so happy with the project. That would have been a very funny picture.
Amazing. I'd like to just add two statistics because I know you that this is one of the things I love about Chopard is that you do so much that even people still need to discover more. So even the luminous material that's used on these wonderful Roman indexes is using a new type of superluminova that's 30% brighter than regular superluminova and degrades far less over time. And then beating inside this wonderful watch is also the calibre 01.01, which is cost certified as a chronometer and is an in-house movement as well. So gentlemen, let's talk about the new chronograph. And I have to say, I absolutely love it. And I love it, you know, when I saw it, I was wondering, did you even design or conceptualize the chronograph version of this watch at the same time when you were creating the time and date watch?
Well, I would not be telling the truth if I said, yes, we did, but it existed in my mind already, just like other versions already exist in my mind, but I won't tell you. I promised not to move too fast now. So, but the chronograph version definitely existed in terms of the fact that we wanted to present a bigger version. And for that reason, it had to be a meaningful version. And the chronograph is a very logical step and a big milestone for the Alpine Eagle. Knowing that we have a beautiful and outstanding chronograph movement at our disposal, I think this was the best combination we could think of.
I have to say, as I get a bit older, and Karl-Fritz, you have many years before you have to worry about this, but my eyesight starts to get worse and worse. And the irony is the day that you can afford nice chronographs is the day that you have trouble reading them a lot of times, you know? So the amazing thing about the Alpine Eagle XL chronograph was I looked at it and I could see everything clearly with optimum visibility. So the first thing I want to point out, and I think Karl-Friedrich, you had mentioned this, is that the construction, the design of your in-house chronograph movements are such that the subdials for the hour and minute counter are slightly higher on the dial, slightly above the horizontal line created by the crown, so that you can have larger subdials. Tell me a little bit about the need for visibility, because I know you wear these watches even when you're driving in the Mille Miglia, and why it was so important to you.
You know, when we launched the project for the chronograph movement, which was initially really designed for an LUC watch, and we launched that project back in 2002. The first movement was presented in 2006. One of the most important features that I wanted to put forward was precisely the fact that if you make a chronograph, we need to read it. We want to read it well, and we want to read it at a glance, because knowing I knew this from the Mille Miglia, obviously, or driving my cars, that once in a while you do want to see where you are, and you can't spend too much time looking at your watch. It's a bit too dangerous, right? So basically, this was a feature we really wanted to have, and it comes in clearly very handy. And it gives the chronograph a very purposeful look, and a very, I would say, a look which you expect from a chronograph. No?
Karl-Fritz, what do you as a younger watch collector find so compelling about chronographs?
Well, I just like the fact that, first of all, it's actually a complication that you can use that's handy to you. Because if we talk, for example, about a tourbillon, yes, they're beautiful, and they take a spotlight center in the watch, which is great. But chronometers, you can actually use them for different things. For example, I have my Mille Miglia chronograph, which I do use when I boil some eggs. It does happen. I prefer using that than using my phone, because you actually get the manual click, which is always great. So I think that's one of the main points. It's a complication you can actually use in your day-to-day for random things, but it reminds you just how interesting and intricate this mechanical piece
Time measurement is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think it's beautiful complications as well, because there's a lot going on your dial, and it just gives you different things to look at when you look at your watch. If you're just glancing at the time, you can take a look at the other hands that are in the watch and how the smaller dials are positioned. It just creates this sense of, I'd say, messy organization.
I would like to congratulate you both, incidentally. You have won the 2020 Revolution Award for Best Watch Design, or Best Achievement in Watch Design, for the Alpine Eagle chronograph. And so I'd like to put the watch up on the screen.
Wow.
No, and well deserved.
We are turning red now.
Thank
you so much.
Absolute pleasure, sir, and well deserved. You know, for me, I think the best watch designs, they always remind me of my favorite human beings, and they are masterpieces of nuance and also tantalizing examples of dynamic contrast. So if we could put a picture of the watch up for a second, I just want to point out some of my favorite aspects of this dial. So you have, of course, this wonderful Alpine Eagle iris embossing, which is, you know, so elegant. And then you have, in contrast, these purposeful, big, bold counters, oversized for the hour and the minutes. And as I mentioned, for the first time, I can read them beautifully. One of the details which I love the most was these square markers with a little tail that in some ways remind me of one of my favorite references, which is the Paul Newman Daytona. Although I'm sure that wasn't your intention. I know you just wanted to do some interesting, dynamic, vintage details that bring a little bit of a twist to the watch, which is very modern. In addition to that, I love that every single index is there. So you have 60 indexes for the seconds, 30 indexes for the minutes, and you've got an index for each and every hour also, so the perfect precision. I love also that for the first time, I can actually read the date perfectly without a loop. So you've done this masterpiece of this huge oversized date as well. Of course, the wonderful applied white gold indexes filled with this special superluminova that is 30% brighter. And then I would say a masterpiece of a tachymeter as well. A tachymeter unlike any I've seen before, in that you actually have precise indexes in between the spaces of the speed to give you the most precise tachymeter I've ever seen on a chronograph. So, I mean, gentlemen, I don't think it gets any better than that.
Well, thank you for the great compliment. But it's true that we spent a lot of time on this dial. And it was worth it. And I think, well, the dial is not only the face of the watch, but it really has a purpose, and especially when it comes to a sports watch like this. Well, thank you. We're grateful for this honor, and it's absolutely great to hear these news today from you.
Well deserved, sir. You know, the other thing that I love about this watch, because I've seen it on photographs on the wrist of my friend Johannes Hubel, is that it's a 44mm watch, but it wears much smaller. And I think this comes back to the initial work you did on the bracelet integration, so it really conforms to the wrist. And the only rationale for having it at 44 ultimately is that you wanted to have it at the perfect visibility. So it wasn't that you were trying to make a 44mm watch, it's just that the size at this point at 44 was perfect. Am I correct?
Well, building a watch, and then that stands for any watch, there's always a compromise, there's always the question, what do I want to achieve and what can I possibly do? What are my limits? And then you have to work on the edge of everything and try to give your very best within the size of the movement, the size of the watch that we want to obtain, and so on. It's an endless chain of details that is put together, and you end up with hopefully with what becomes an almost perfect object.
And when you know that to make a new movement is like what, 6 years of development.
Yes.
I remember when I still had kind of no idea about how we were going to go about this design. We were talking about movements, and I remember I was saying, it would be nice to have it a little bit thinner and whatnot. And then you told me, Karl-Fritz, we can't. It's 6 years if we want to make a new movement.
Yes.
And when he then showed me the watch, the first prototype in real, I put it on my wrist and I was like, actually, it doesn't look a 44 at all. And so I think it's, as you said, it's really about compromise.
And you know, the movement itself, when we built it at the time, we wanted to have a certain, actually, an important amount of features, and in order to house all these features and to have the economy, the autonomy of that we wanted, the precision that we wanted, and so on, the movement had to take a certain shape. And then it's all about trying to make it slightly smaller, slightly thinner, and so on. It's always a give and take, but at the end of the day, what is important is the final result.
Well, the final result is spectacular, absolutely spectacular. And I love, okay, two last things I want to talk about. First is the integration of the pushers. It's such a perfect integration because they just flow like a natural extension of the crown guards and somehow make the crown guards even more sculpted and muscular, which I absolutely love. And then I have to say that I think it features one of the very best chronograph movements in the world. It is the 03.05 in-house movement that you make, but it's just off the top of my head. It's 4 Hertz. It's free sprung, so meaning the balance is adjusted by inertia weights. It is column wheel. It is vertical clutch, and it is flyback. And maybe one thing that people don't really know so much about, but actually they should, is that it also features a precise jumping minute counter as well.
Jumping minute counter, yes.
Exactly. So maybe this can be a nice moment for us to transition into one of my favorite things that you've achieved, which is the most incredible legacy of authenticity when it comes to movement making, Karl-Friedrich. So I know next year we're going to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of Chopard LUC, and this was the birth of in-house movement making. But when you decided to go into movements, in each reference that you went into, you wanted to set a new benchmark. And I think that if you don't mind, let's take a little walk through memory lane related to this. I think Summit has prepared a little chart in terms of everything you achieved. But in 1996, you had created the calibre 1.96. In 1997, you had created the 1860 watch, which featured this caliber. And this was an incredible caliber. In the context of the 90s, no one was creating in-house calibers, let alone a cost-certified Geneva seal micro rotor caliber. Then in 2000, you created the Quattro, which I believe was the first wristwatch I'd seen with 4 barrels, 2 sets of stack barrels, good for an 8 days, or actually mighty 9 days of power reserve, still with cost certification and Geneva seal. In 2000,
it's still the only one, yes.
In 2003, you came out with the LUC Tourbillon, which also incidentally featured 8 days of power reserve. It was also 4 Hertz, was also cost certified, making you the only maker of tourbillons besides Patek Philippe that had the courage to cost certify their tourbillon movements. And then following that, in 2005, you created the Lunar One, which had this incredible orbital moon phase. In 2006, you created the Strike One. Now, 2006 is maybe where I'd like to stop because I was invited for a party at your manufacturer, and at this party in your manufacturer, you unveiled a movement to us. And okay, let's pause for a second, and let's just, close our eyes and fantasize. If I was to put together a dream list of the most incredible features for a chronograph movement, I would say automatic winding. I would say 4 Hertz. I would say free sprung balance wheel with a full traversing balance bridge. I would say column wheel. I would say vertical clutch, because vertical clutch can be activated and used as long as you want without affecting the underlying precision of the watch. And in addition, that eliminates chrono backlash as well. But then, I don't know if it's possible, but I would also like to include a flyback. I would also, if it's possible, like to include a 0 reset mechanism for the small seconds, but then that would be too much to ask because no one's ever done that before. And then on top of that, I would like to include a precise jumping minute counter, which would make me only the second brand ever to create a precise jumping minute counter for their chronograph. The other one being Lange at the time for their 951.01 movement in the datograph. To be fair, several years later, Patek Philippe with their CH29-525 would also have a precise jumping minute counter, but it would be the only movement that is automatic with a precise jumping minute counter, and also the only vertical clutch movement with a precise jumping minute counter. I don't think that this would be possible. Do you think that's possible, Karl-Friedrich?
Well, I mean, that's what you find in the LUC movement we presented back in 2006.
So this is it.
I may want to add one thing, which is something you can only feel and you cannot quantify. It's when you use the pushers of your chronograph, it's very soft and yet precise. You don't have to push too hard and your finger doesn't hurt when you pushed, but it still feels very precise. And this is a feature that I also wanted to include at the time, and which I still enjoy today.
You know, I totally agree with you, and I think the tactile quality of a watch, especially the chronograph, both in the stop and start, but also in the reset, is one of the most beautiful sensations. I believe at the launch of the watch, you told me, Wei, it's similar to when you close the door of a good car, right?
Exactly.
It creates an emotion. And Karl-Fritz, yes. You know, do you remember at this time, I mean, did you attend this event? Do you remember your dad working towards this incredible goal?
I mean, to go back to the comment of the car, that's such a typical thing my father would say. I can so imagine him telling you that. but back at that time, I would spend a bit of time here every now and then because I think he was preparing me. He would show me around, and I knew he always had those.
But that's the time when I still tried to ask him to actually wear a watch.
Ah, yeah, true.
Because at one point I said, now, Karl-Fritz, maybe it's time to wear a watch. He said, finally, he came up with his philosophy and said, look, I will wear a watch once I can wear a real watch. Because he didn't want to consider anything else. So he waited until he was, what, 18 or 16?
Yeah, and I remember it was at the same exact time where you would always show me everything on these watches, and I'm sure the chronograph was one of them, and there were probably a few tourbillons as well, and the quattro as well, and he would sit at that dinner table and he would explain the watches, and I would understand that he's so passionate about it, but I think I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand how amazing watchmaking is, and I would just sit there thinking, this is a peculiar interest to have as a 40, 50-year-old man to be interested by. But I mean, when I grew older, obviously I understood what the passion was all about, and it really the passion of watchmaking really grabs you at once. You don't really see it coming. You start wearing your first watches. You get interested in different brands, independent watchmakers, then complications, then different movements, straps, and then it really just pulls you in, and you can't think of anything else. Yeah.
I think one thing I want to add maybe for the chronograph is definitely that many people, even professionals, don't always realize the challenge that the construction and development of a chronograph means. It's probably the biggest challenge we went through at the manufacture. It's a bigger challenge than a tourbillon anytime, or because there's so many interactions in a chronograph, so many moving parts. It's really a great challenge. It's a high mountain to climb. In terms of when we speak Alpine Eagle, it's impressive.
So I would like to say that in my mind, and one of the reasons why I love the Alpine Eagle XL chronograph so much is in some ways it's the summation of an incredible 40-year journey at Chopard. For you, Karl-Friedrich, starting in 1980 with the Moritz, but also representative of the journey that you started in 1996 with the creation of LUC and in-house movements, and certainly in 2006 when you presented the 10CF, this groundbreaking, and to me, what I consider to be the single best automatic chronograph movement in the world. And then in 2019, when you and Karl-Fritz together created the Alpine Eagle and presented it. And now to see that a version of that incredible movement now resides inside the Alpine Eagle chronograph, that's got to make you feel pretty happy, you know?
Well, I won't say no. Of course, I'm very happy. I'm more than happy, but as always, you always have the next thing in mind, and things go on. But I think it's one of the great milestones we'll be able to look back upon, and a great milestone to build on for Karl-Fritz probably as well.
Absolutely. Karl-Fritz, what do you think when you look back at the special history of this watch and understanding the 40-year journey that your father took and then where you joined him at some point? Does that fill you with a certain emotion regarding the chronograph?
Well, first of all, it's an enormous, huge respect I have for everything that was done. I mean, building a manufacturer in '96 was a super bold move. And I know he had to do some convincing for that as well. And I can't thank him enough that he actually made that move, because we would be in a very, very, very different position now if we didn't have our own movements. And watches like the Alpine Eagle Chrono would be watches that we could only dream of. And so first of all, it's a huge thank message that I'd like to give, that he actually went for it and did all this. And one day, not yet, when I join, that's pretty sure, I'll be more than happy to have all these movements to look and just pick and choose, and there are amazing things to do so with the movements we have. And I'm sure in the future there'll be amazing opportunities to work with new materials, to make new movements, maybe even some crazier things if possible, but that's going to be a huge challenge I'm ready to take on. But for now, I really enjoy helping my father around, pushing a few things around, bringing a few new ideas, some bad ones, some pretty good ones. but for sure, I mean, what's amazing is the heritage behind the piece. And I think with the Alpine Eagle, it's really something that's central to it. If we look at the St. Moritz, at the time it was already a very bold watch. It was an interesting watch. It was a watch that people could talk about. And it's the same with the Alpine Eagle. It's a watch that has history. It's a watch that fits in its time. But it's also a watch, if you look past the design, even past the movements, there are so many different things you can say about the watch, and it's a great conversation starter. A lot of people look at the watch, and then you just start talking about the different elements, and the discussion goes on and on. So I think it's a great achievement.
But it was not, and I have to say this, not my own achievement, but it was really an achievement of what we call our artisans of emotion.
Absolutely.
All the whole team of specialists and professionals and great people that we happen to have in our firm, our company, and a great thanks go to them as well. We have launched a few films about the artisans at Chopard, and I can only suggest anyone who is interested to look at those, because these are the people who are behind these products just as much as we are, of course, but without them we would not be sitting here.
Brilliant.
And to kind of go on a bit more on the artisans, since we've been working, the three of us, my grandfather, my father, and I, here at the company on this Alpine Eagle, I've had the chance to meet a lot of these people, a lot of the artisans we have in-house that work on these pieces. And it's amazing to work with people that have such passion for what they do. And it's every single day they come up with a new idea, they come up with a new way of doing things. And you can really feel the passion when you walk in the room and we had a design meeting or a meeting about the band. You would come in the room and you would feel the passion. It's really something, it's undescribable. And it's a huge chance for me to be able to work and learn in this environment. It's a unique chance.
Amazing. I just want to show a picture of the three versions of the watch before we open the floor to questions. I should also specify that the wonderful calibre 03.05, which is in the Alpine Eagle XL chronograph, features everything that we talked about that was launched in the 10 CF in 2006, except for the zero reset. So it has a 4 hertz vibrational speed. It's
and we have them here as well.
And which one have you selected to wear yourself, sir?
I selected the pitch black dial because, again, it's about readability, and the contrast with the black color is bigger. And I have the similar problem as you do, so I prefer the black one, but the blue one is definitely probably the most attractive when you only think about design and color.
And I also love the two-tone watch as well, because again, this is another statement of your ethics, because it's a combination of Lucent Steel, which, as we had mentioned before, uses a 70% recycled steel, yes. But also uses gold, which is Fairmine gold, which is, you are also a pioneer in ethically sourcing your gold and tracing every step of the production of the gold as well. So that watch also is an incredible symbol of the underlying ethics of the Scheufele family and of what you guys consistently do. A great watch as well. And for you, Karl-Fritz, which watch are you wearing?
For now, I'm still on the last launch. I'm wearing the Alpine Eagle with the gray dial, Bernina gray dial. But I haven't made my choice yet for the chrono. I'm not sure. Or maybe I'll wait for the next complication. We'll see. But
which complication is that?
He's trying to make me not.
Oh, he's trying to make you talk now.
Nice try away. No. But there are definitely some interesting things coming, and I'll stop at that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for your time. Maybe we'll open the floor to a couple of questions, Sumit, if you don't mind. And I have to ask you, Karl-Fritz, as a statement of this watch's ability to be a sports chic watch, to be sporting and stylish at the same time, will you accept the challenge to do a backflip off of a bridge wearing this chronograph?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a little something hidden away on Instagram where there are some stunts being made with an Alpine Eagle on my wrist. If someone finds it.
I was hoping that by now he would stop doing these stunts. But obviously, he still continues.
It's super cool. I loved it.
Yeah, it's super cool, but, somehow dangerous, I think.
True. So, Sumit, shall we open the floor to questions? What shall be the first one?
Gentlemen, it's my pleasure to have you this evening, your afternoon, your time. I'm going to ask the first question that most people are asking is, because we've touched a little on the future of the Alpine Eagle, people want to know in what sort of direction is the Alpine Eagle headed towards?
Well, as we just said, we cannot disclose details of what we are planning, but certainly the Alpine Eagle is heading into introducing some more special versions, including maybe a skeleton, maybe a tourbillon, but also using combinations of other materials. I mean, there is a lot of ideas in the pipeline in that direction. So I think the Alpine Eagle can keep us busy for a little while.
And I think Alpine Eagle as a watch is a great base to build on upon. there are a lot of variations that are possible, and that's also what's great with this model, is that there's so much you can do. In the end, we really don't really know where to start.
It's about choice.
I was asked a question, because I have said at several moments that I think it's one of the, if not the best sports chic chronograph that's out there. I would like to respond to that if I might. I would say that the first thing is how beautiful the dial is, but how beautiful the design is. Because I think it's impossible for a watch to be really technically proficient, but not fill you with emotion. And so the first moment I saw that, I loved every detail of the dial. I loved in particular the contrast of this very elegant decoration for the dial, contrasted by this very bold and precise and almost and technical dimension of the subdials. But then if you look at it from a watch that fits perfectly on the wrist, that is really original at the same time, feels incredibly nostalgic somehow, that you feel like, you know, it's been a product that's existed for 40 years, which in fact it has kind of also. But I think the last thing is, again, it's that, and you know, Karl-Friedrich and Karl-Fritz are very humble people, so they don't boast, but it's got basically one of the best movements out there, if not the best movement. So it's vertical clutch, 4 Hertz, free sprung balance wheel, which to me is incredibly important. Column wheel activated, precise jumping minute counter. There is no other watch in this category that has a precise jumping minute counter. There's only two other watches, one from Lange and one from Patek, that have precise jumping minute counters. And it's even something that you don't even really talk about or boast about that much. And then on top of that, it's got a flyback, right? And that package of incredible technical proficiency plus beautiful design. Then on top of that, innovation in terms of material. Steel, yes, I understand, you know, and I love the fact that you kept with a traditional material like steel, but we're still innovated tremendously, creating Lucent Steel, which probably involved you retooling all of your machines to be able to make Lucent Steel cases as well. I can only imagine the cost that's related to that as well. So I think that as a statement of authenticity, as a statement of legitimacy, as a statement of a brand that doesn't boast about what it does, but just does everything to the best possible dimension, I think it's an awesome watch. And the last question I would ask both of you is, I think a viewer was asking, what is the importance of sustainability to both of you, and what more will you do in the future to ensure that we are impacting the planet and the people in it in the most positive way?
You want to go first? Should I?
Well, I think the older generation will go first, and that the younger generation will follow in that. For us, I mean, the journey started back in 2010 when we celebrated the 150th anniversary of Chopard. And with my sister, we were wondering of what we could actually contribute as a company active in a luxury field, of course, but also an industrial company, certainly not one of the more polluting ones, but definitely we could easily identify different journeys that we could begin. The most important one was the one about materials that we use, the sourcing of those materials, and this brought us to the ethical gold that we use in all collections back since 2018, but we started with using Fairmine gold in some of our collections. Now we are into the sustainability in terms of steel, but the next step is, of course, to expand this Lucent steel to other collections of the company. And still a big field that we can explore further is of course diamond and color stones. I mean, we are part of the Responsible Jewelry Council, but we know that there's still more that could be done. But more locally speaking, we have the building we are sitting in today corresponds to the latest and most stringent norms in terms of sustainability as well, the way we cool it, the way we heat it, and so on. But I think the next generation will have to continue in our footsteps.
Yeah, and that's also great because there is a lot to do, as my father said, on stones. And I know both of my sisters are really interested and know a lot about stones. So there's going to be a big project to go on about there. Then the Lucent Steel, of course, we're going to be following the process of expanding it into other collections. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done on materials, but I think there's also work to be done on what we do day to day in our operations, finding easier ways to ship, faster, more efficient. In the stores also, what materials do we use in our boutiques? There's so many roads to explore, and I think that many companies view sustainability as something that's slowing them down and that only costs money, and in the end it's not even that useful. But I think there's a lot to be done. It should be a project that people get excited about. Sustainability should be something where people would like to invest, and it doesn't have to slow you down. It can actually add a lot of value to your product, and the best example, one of the great examples, is the steel we use in the watch. Yes, it costs money to make, but it adds humongous value to the product, and that's a good sign that sustainable products are actually
not forgetting the feel-good factor.
Also,
that those who offer the watch or buy the watch will get by knowing about how this product came to life.
Amazing. Gentlemen, it's been wonderful having this adventure with you, living the journey of the Alpine Eagle, but really the 40-year experience has brought us to this point where you've created this magnificent timepiece. Thank you both so much for your time. Thank you on behalf of all the Revolution viewers around the world, and bravo. Congratulations on your prize, and wishing you a wonderful day.
It was a great pleasure, and thank you for the prize. We are really, truly honored.
yes, indeed, it was very nice to see you again, Wei, even if it's through a screen. But I must say I'm very fond of following all of your adventures on your page and on the Revolution page and the Rake as well. I see some amazing content. So thank you as well for you to share with us. So,
yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wei.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.